Hey everybody, welcome to the Afwerx Ask Me Anything number 2. This is 2 out of 3, and so we're looking forward to telling you about the open topic today, and hopefully answering some of your questions. We'll have folks in the chat, as well as us here on the line to be able to answer them either live or via the chat. So this is for the Afwerx SIBR and SITR open topic, both phase ones. And so those are denoted, X21.2 or X21.B. And those are what we're going to talk about today. So just note that the information we're giving is specific to the open topic. So let's jump into it. So a couple of rules of engagement, as we would say. Just a reminder that this call is being recorded. It's streaming live on YouTube. Obviously, you guys are watching it, and so we will be keeping it up on YouTube. And so that chat, the chat line, as well as this video, will remain open. And so please, don't present classified or proprietary information through that chat because folks will still be able to watch it later on. There's also, a decent number of folks that will join us today. And so just want to be mindful of that. Please post your questions in the chat. So like I said, we'll be answering questions live as well as just typing them throughout the briefing, but we will do our best to answer them all. So please post them in there. It also helps us to get an idea. If we can't answer them this time in that last AMA, it will most likely be a Q&A. And so we can take note of the questions we weren't able to answer today, and we'll be sure to answer them next time. So please do that. My team will be in there here shortly, and they'll be able to get on those. And then last thing, myself and Jared Evans will be joining us pretty soon to talk through the STTR side. So I'm Zoe Walters. I am the SIBR Phase 1 Program Manager for the open topic. And then Jared Evans will be joining us here in a little bit. He is the STTR, so SITR Phase 1 Program Manager for the open topic. We also have Ms. Christina Croak, who's joined us. She's our contracting officer. Many of you have probably seen her name and email address associated with the topic in the solicitation instructions. So she's on here to help answer all of those contract-specific questions for us. So I'd like to note that there are additional resources. If you go to our website, www.afwerx.af.mil/SIBR, you can find resources specific to SIBR and STTR as well there. And there should be some solid resources for you all. So why are we doing this? Why do we do the open topic? There are thousands of commercially viable companies that have not yet fully explored the Air Force as a potential customer and whose technology could be useful to us. That's probably not new information for you, but it's relatively new information to the Air Force. And so while we've traditionally looked towards the commercial market to see which technologies are out there and which ones are available to us, we're trying to take the SBIR program and STTR program to truly do that on a little bit different scale than we've done in the past. So we're trying to reach out to see, really the breadth of technologies that the United States has to offer. And we're looking to continue to make it easy to work for us. So we understand that, especially if you're new to working with the government, it's very confusing. And it's difficult. There's a lot of processes, there's a lot of certifications, and just understanding, the solicitation instructions even, and being able to apply in the first place has traditionally been very difficult. And so we have tried to knock some of that down from the beginning with the open topic. And so that is one of the reasons that we're on the phone today. One of the reasons that we'll put this information out to you, and we'll try to make it as easy as possible for you throughout the SBIR STTR program. And the whole reason that we're doing this in the end is really for transition, right? Because we're looking for amazing technologies, and not only are we just looking to see if they're out there or if they could be useful to us, but we're looking to deliver those to our warfighters. And so we have a really strong focus in our program around transition. So our ecosystem is growing. This is kind of a for your information slide. This is not the only opportunity within the DoD for this type of solicitation, for this type of innovation to take place. And so SpaceWorks is being stood up, Space Prime as well, and you can find information on those, on the internet, as well as as time goes on and these organizations become more solid, more complete, then we'll be sure to put out more information about them. But there's a list. Digital Works. We have these things we call spark cells at Afwerx. They're all throughout the Air Force, throughout the country, and even the world. And they are innovating, at that airman level. And so you can find information about spark cells on our Afwerx website. And then we have a mission area program that we'll talk about a little bit later on, where you can see specific technology areas that our Department of the Air Force folks are looking at, where we have capability gaps or we have requirements that need to be met. As far as the ecosystem to support you all as companies once you enter the program, we've updated our curriculum. So we go through a curriculum with you. It kind of takes you through that top level down, structure of the Air Force, all the way through talking about, flight test certifications and ATOs and the things that you would need to be able to operate in an Air Force environment or a Space Force environment. So we also, we have potential in-person, hopefully this year, colliders and events. So those things have been virtual for the last year. They do happen every round though. And we're hoping that we can actually get to some in-person events this year. So we're looking forward to that. So as I mentioned, we're talking about this is SBIR and STTR phase 1. There is no direct to phase 2 topic for 21.2. So just note that I've seen a lot of questions about that direct to phase 2 topic, and we're just unable to put it out. So just note that there's no open topic that's direct to phase 2. They're both for phase 1. And as you guys can see on the slide, we have both SBIR and STTR offerings. They're both $50,000 for a 3-month period of performance, and we award about 900 to 1,200 of those SBIR phase 1s per year. So that's the 3 cycles. And on the STTR side, we award about 200 to 300 of those every year. Of course, the number of awards depends on the funds available to us. And so with that, Jared, I briefly introduced you earlier, but if you want to introduce yourself and jump into the STTR solicitation instructions, then we'd be happy to have you.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Zoe. So yes, my name is Jared Evans. I'm the program manager for the open topic STTR. One of the things that as you go through this and navigate the SBIR and STTR space is that STTR is notated by letters as opposed to numbers. So on the previous slide, when you're looking at the title, right, the 21.B as opposed to 21.2, and also the STTR has a T prefix. So 21B T CS01. So that's one way to know when you get to the websites and you're reading the documents, the solicitations themselves, that you're talking about STTR. So we'll go on to the next slide and talk a little bit about the program. Ultimately, STTR is really designed to help transfer and commercialize dual use technology, right? And specifically from the research space, right? So one of the biggest differences between SBIR and STTR, and we'll touch on this here in a moment, is the mandatory presence, the required presence of a research institution. Basically what happens is you as a small business would come to us with a relationship with a qualifying research institution, and they would be part and parcel of your contract, right? So they would be a subcontractor to you when you come do like the cost volumes and such in the proposal. But ultimately, and then from a program perspective, what we're trying to do is really facilitate engagement between the research space, the commercial research space, and the DoD operational space as well, right? So there's a lot of lateral movement between research to research, between commercial and the DoD, but we're also trying to facilitate forward movement, if you will, going and commercializing that lab technology, that research and facilitating that forward progression there. One thing to take it into account is that these are government contracts that we're talking about. In every case, the Air Force lets government contracts through these small business programs, not research grants. So that may be true for other entities, other agencies who are working with these programs, SBIR grants, from NSF, for instance. But the Air Force, we only deal in contracts in this space. All right, so we'll go to the next slide here. We'll kind of talk about some of the differences between the two programs. So from our perspective, from a program perspective, they are nearly identical in execution, right? They are nearly identical in structure, right? So we go from a three-phase commercialization program, discover, prototype, and transition, as you can see there. It results in that same sole source justification, that J&A, that can be used federal-wide across the federal government. So when you come through and work with the Air Force and you develop solutions with Air Force customers, the rest of the federal space can use those directly, right? And folks don't necessarily realize that that's almost a bigger value proposition for the government side, right? As a government employee, if I wanted to go and put a company on contract, I'd have to find the mechanism and the money and find ways to do that. And that whole process can easily take over a year, 18 months, depending in some cases, right? And through this sole source justification, right, by going through this small business process, that allows customers across the federal government again to come directly to you and kind of fast forward a lot of that work because we satisfy that as part of this program. But one of the things that is unique about STTR versus SBIR, right, is that research institution, right? That research institution has, by statute, to perform between 30 and 60% of work, right? So this can be a qualifying university, a nonprofit, an FFRDC. There's a lot of opportunity here in terms of who can be that qualifying research partner, that research institution, as it's referred to in policy. But one thing we wanted to highlight here is that it's one entity that meets this qualification, right? So you can't have two universities, for instance, who are each doing 15% of the work, right? That would not meet the requirements of the program. We have to have one research institution who is doing between 30 and 60% of the work. You can have secondary contractors, additional folks who are in that space as well and working with you. But we have to have one research institution doing at least 30%. There's some also other differences, like the principal investigator. They can be primarily employed at the small business, as is the case with the SBIR program, but they can also be primarily employed at that research institution. So this allows folks with maybe high opportunity costs to come keep their day job, work through this program, right? Go from phase 1 to phase 2 to the supplemental programs, right? All while working at the research institution, right? Which is a huge value proposition. And also, STTR historically has been really purely research, really purely R&D. And the contracts that we let are research and development. But one of the ways that we facilitate transition is engaging very closely with the operational communities and maintaining those same opportunities between the STTR and SBIR programs, right? So we want to make both these programs and all of the technology and all of the industry that comes with them available to our government customer base, and this is one way that we do that. All right, so the proposal structure is going to look very similar, almost identical. The structure itself will be identical between the two programs, but we'll hit on a couple specific pieces. So volume 2, the technical volume, we still have a maximum of 25 slides, just like SBIR. You'll notice a slight difference between the number of required and the number of as applicable slides. So 12 required and 9 as applicable for the STTR. For volume 5, the supporting documentation, we talked about the research institution having to kind of be on board when that proposal is submitted. So the way that we know that, right, the way that we check that off and meet that requirement is maintaining that a teaming arrangement is submitted and an IP agreement, right? And in either case of those, we are simply verifying that those documents are in place. We're not adjudicating the contents of those documents, right? So we're not going to tell you what that IP agreement with the research institution needs to look like. There is a template available if you would like to use that, but we don't adjudicate that. We don't say that you have to maintain these rights and the research institution has to maintain those rights or anything like that, right? And the same is for the teaming arrangement, right? We're simply verifying that the requirements of the program have been met. So those are due at the time of proposal, right? So when you submit your proposal, those documents need to be in volume 5. And that's one reason we've got them in red, bold font here on the slide. As we move forward, right, the requirement for MOUs in phase 2 is maintained, and that's the same between the two programs. There is no requirement for an MOU here at phase 1. You can certainly include, letters of recommendation or letters of support or all of those kinds of things to demonstrate that, hey, there's a wide market, there's a wide community of people who care about what I'm doing, right, and the technology that we're trying to bring to the table here. But there is no requirement for an MOU or like a letter of recommendation necessarily to come with your phase 1 proposal. All right, so we'll go to the next slide here. All right, so there's some things that we can work with you on, and there's some things that we can't, right? And these are the non-negotiable. So a couple kind of baseline items for folks who may have not gone through this process before that we want to make sure that we iron out and make very clear up front. So first, we talk about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We talk about the supplemental programs, and we allude to the fact that there's a pipeline from this kind of opening of the funnel here in phase 1 all the way through. This proposal that's due on the 17th is for phase 1 only, right? So the maximum contract terms are $50K in 3 months, right? If you come in and you have put in a proposal for more than that or longer than that, we won't be able to evaluate your proposal. You have to meet the baseline thresholds for your phase 1 effort, right? In terms of kind of the cost distribution here, cost allocation, right? So we have them listed here. So at least 40% has to go to the small business. At least 30% has to go to one qualifying research institution. And there's a 30% trade space, right? That can go to the small business. It can go to the research institution. It can go to a secondary research institution or some other subcontractor. But those are the baseline thresholds. If we don't meet those, then we're not going to be able to move forward, regardless of the technology or the impact or any of that kind of thing. Some required documentation, right? This is one of the things that catches people up the most, right? So that teaming arrangement that we talked about, and the allocation of rights agreement. So if we talk about an ARA, that's what we're talking about. And again, we're not checking to see the contents or like to adjudicate the comments of those documents. We simply need to know that those things are there, right? And they're signed and taken care of, right? So those things need to be submitted with your phase 1 proposal at the time of proposal, which is really important. The submission system, you have to use DCEP, right? So we can't take any proposals over email. That's fairly straightforward. So part of that is getting registered and making sure all your information is in there. We ask that you try to kind of get in there early and help yourself out by not waiting till the last minute, right? We have to be doing research, development, test, and evaluation activities as part of these contracts, right? We don't want to buy your commercial item off the shelf, right? We're not buying a service from you or a license from you. We are developing something that doesn't currently exist, right? Now, you could have a baseline of a commercial product, which is excellent, right? But what we want to do is we want to develop a military version of that based on the Air Force's needs, based on the, prospective customers' needs in the Department of the Air Force and the broader DoD, right? So a couple of things that are important there. And then also fraud, waste, and abuse training is mandatory as well. Okay. All right, so what's next? Thursday, the 17th of June is when these are due, right? So we've got to hit the non-negotiables. It's very important. Sometimes we get questions on how can we make a good proposal, right? How can we make it better than just kind of baseline? And the answer is the evaluation criteria here listed 1, 2, and 3, right? This is the only place where we take our subjective evaluator knowledge, right, and apply it to your proposal. Right. Everything else is kind of an eligibility question and check boxes that you have to meet. Right. This evaluation criteria is where we rank. Right. And we, essentially provide, our input as a staff and as an evaluation team on your approach, on your technology, on your impact, right? And we do that through these three evaluation criteria. So commercialization potential, the defense need, and then the technical merit, right? So obviously, those are detailed in the solicitation document itself, so I won't belabor all the verbiage here, but do know that this is the only place that is subjective in our approach during the evaluation process. So, with that, I'll turn it back over to Zoe, and we'll jump in the comments there and try to answer some any questions that are remaining. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jared. So now we'll go into the SBIR side of that. A lot of it will probably sound redundant. As Jared said, we've really tried to align the SBIR and STTR programs, especially in the phase 1 side. But there might be some differences, and we'll be sure to talk about those. So just like STTR, we are funding these SBIRs. They are $50K up to 90 days period of performance for a technical feasibility study. And so really we're looking for you to find the fit between your validated non-defense commercial product and the defense market. So during that period of performance, really that's what we're asking for you to do. And so our proposal structure, very, very similar. So we have those same 6 volumes as you guys will see. The big difference here is that we have, as well, a maximum of 25 slides, but 11 of those are required, and then 9 required as applicable. So you have to have, those 11 required slides. You can find that template on DSIP. So in the proposal documents section, you can find the attachment, which is the slide deck. And that gives you a really good rundown of exactly what we're looking for in your technical volume and exactly what we're looking for in each of those 11 slides. And so I definitely recommend going there. Grab those titles off of there. You don't need to use that same PowerPoint format, but it's really helpful to us if you just explicitly lay out, each thing that we ask for. And you can go up to 25 slides. So 11 minimum, up to 25. Fill out the ones that are applicable to you. And then the rest of the slides you can use to just expound on your technology and your proposed solution. So that's really the big difference there. Those supporting documents, you'll put additional cost info. So that can be your preferred format. That can be a PDF. It can be an Excel. It doesn't really matter. Also, a non-proprietary work plan. So the non-proprietary portion of that is important. So I do ask that you take a look at that before submitting and make sure there's no proprietary markings on it. We'll just have to come back to you if your proposal is selected and ask for you to take off those markings. And then this is also where you put your resumes. So I would like to touch real quick, because we've had questions about this in the past. We do ask for key personnel in the technical volume as one of the slides. You can just outline those key personnel in there, maybe some high points of why they're appropriate for this project, but the actual resumes will go into volume 5, the supporting documents section. And so do keep that in mind. And then you can have letters of support also uploaded into those supporting documents. They can be individual PDFs, but it is helpful if they're all merged into one. And so it's easy for us as evaluators to find it. And then again, just to echo Jared, part of this program, just note that a signed MOU with an Air Force, ours will be customer and end user, so apologies for that, are required to proceed to phase 2. So what's next? Again, so same time, right? June 17th, noon Eastern, that's a Thursday. Your proposals will need to be submitted to DSIP. We cannot, we can't take them any later than that. So we also have to take the proposals through DSIP. So please don't email them in. Please don't have somebody else try to submit them, to us in another way. We can only accept the proposals and view the proposals that come in through DSIP. So DSIP inevitably has issues the last couple of days that proposals are due, especially in big cycles like this. So I would recommend, going in even the week before and trying to submit that proposal. You can always update it if you want to later on, but then at least you have something in the system that meets the requirement. And the evaluation criteria, again, you can read that here. This is taken straight out of the solicitation instructions. So if you look through that document as well, you will find this language, and this is what we're evaluating your proposals based off of. So saw a couple of questions already in the chat about, hey, are you evaluating based on these things? This is the evaluation criteria, so I would recommend really digging into it and looking at it to see, you know, how your proposal is gonna be looked at and what will set you up, you know, best for award. So our non-negotiables, you have to be a qualifying registered small business. On that note, I would like to emphasize, please check your SAM registrations to make sure that you're eligible for all awards, all government contracts. We have had instances in the past, and we continue to have issues with folks who are only registered to accept government grants or, you know, very specific types of government funding. And so just check to make sure that you are eligible via SAM. And as well as, you know, meet all those other small business requirements. But I do want to hit on that. Please check SAM to make sure that you are eligible to receive government contracts. The next non-negotiable for us, again, this is solicitation for phase 1, right? And so if you propose more than $50,000, if you're proposing more than 3 months, then we're not going to be able to evaluate your proposal. It'll exceed the scope of the phase 1. And so do just keep that in mind. Again, recommend reading through the solicitation instructions to see, you know, exactly what you need. We talked about needing to receive the proposals through DSIP. It has to be research and development, test and evaluation. So we do ask for you, you know, in your tech volume to explain, you know, kind of why this is RD T&E. Please be explicit about it. Let us know, you know, what kind of research are you doing? What is this technical feasibility study, you know, going to look like? How is that going to, you know, show the integration, the possible integration of your solution with the DoD system? And so that's just, you know, that's non-negotiable. We're using research and development, test and evaluation funds. And so we have to be sure that we are indeed funding those types of efforts. So do take a look at that and try to call that out explicitly in your technical volume. And then the last one, that fraud, waste, and abuse training, you do have to have that certificate in your proposal package. And then, you know, if you guys don't have these things right here, then we're unfortunately unable to evaluate your proposal. So those are the really big hitters, the important things. So we'll go into identifying a defense need. And Jared, do you want to touch on this?
Sure. Yeah, we can walk through there. So ultimately, you know, as you notice, one of the criteria is defense need. One of the evaluation criteria, one of the things that we look at your proposal and have to judge. This defense need can come from a lot of different places, right? It can come from, you know, the national security strategy saying, hey, we need, you know, certain types of technology, or we need to develop certain things faster. It can come from, you know, an organization, right? In the individual organization that have said, and, you know, whether it be public releases or otherwise, that, hey, we you know, we need to be able to do X, Y, or Z better, right? Another way that we identify Air Force needs or defense needs is through these focus areas, right? What focus areas are basically, you know, communities of interest in the Air Force, right? And problem statements that are of particular interest to Department of the Air Force members, right? So you can go onto the Air Force Ventures website, look through the focus areas, and see what a lot of our customer base has said. Hey, you know, we'd like to see developments in this area. We'd like to see these kinds of products, right? And that's another way that you can identify the need or the pull, if you will, for your particular technology or solution. So that's really important. How this process works on the back end is that when you come through the process, right, there's obviously submitted a proposal, you identify these focus areas in your proposal and go through. Following contract award, right, we will send your information to the owner, the author of that focus area, right, and them in their community has the opportunity then to work directly with you through this program and link up with you for follow-on phase 2 opportunities and you know, further work with you to develop your technology for their space. You can, if you have folks that are already interested. As you see here, you can have them supply letters of support that that can speak to that defense need specifically, right, for them and their mission set. That's a great way to help set yourself apart in phase one. Again, there's no requirement for an MOU or letter of support in phase one, but it's an opportunity, to speak to that evaluation criteria specifically. Okay. Of note, there's a few other resources, right, that can kind of help provide insight to the process that can give you more information and context about kind of the things that we're offering, and provide kind of corollary opportunities that are all kind of aligned in the same space, right? Whether that be the PTAX, whether that be working with the Afwerx challenges, is another great way to link up with defense users and customers in your space. And the defense innovation marketplace. These are all great areas to help identify get some initial idea on where your product market fit might be, right? Both from a customer or an end user standpoint, but also from a product standpoint, right? What kind of challenges, or how should you apply your technology? How should you apply, your product or what have you to the end user and customer base across the DoD? So this program is really aligned with the Air Force, right? We're talking about the Air Force and Air Force users, and certainly we're using Air Force money to do this. But one of the things that's really inherently critical about what we're doing, right? Inherently special is the ability to bring in users and customers from other services and from across the government and private, investment space, for instance, and consolidate that interest, consolidate those resources onto the contract vehicles that we use, right, and onto the timelines that we're able to achieve. So there's a ton of opportunity there, and certainly, the core of this is Air Force, right? We want to be able to solve Air Force problems, but we realize that Air Force problems, to a large extent, are not unique, right? The other services also care about the same things that we care about to a very high degree, right? The civilian sector, right? The commercial sector cares about a lot of the same things that we do, right? We have a lot of normal problems, right? If you want to think of it that way. So these programs are really excellent for, helping get at the larger federal space, helping us develop these dual use technologies. And at the end of the day, we want to be your customer, right? We want to work with you to have products, technologies, solutions that we can use, that makes our customers, our government customers' lives easier and our mission more effective. So that's I'll pause there for questions, or Zoe, if you want to jump in.
Thanks, Jared. Appreciate it. I think we're almost through our slides here. We could jump to questions. Again, this info may be a little dated, but we do have, again, on the Afwerx website, if you go to afwerx.af.mil, then we have some how to apply kind of recommendations, eligibility kind of at a brief overview, and then we can point you exactly where you need to go to find the full eligibility guidelines. So we will take questions now, and our team will feed us some of those. We'll also be checking in the chat. I would like to start by saying we won't be posting these slides in this slide deck, but we will keep this link up on YouTube for at least through the end of the closeout of the proposal packages. And so if you want to go back and look through it, if you think that you missed something, you'll just have to pull up the YouTube link to look at it. We won't be posting actual hard copies of these slides. So hopefully that takes care of that question. Oh, Jared, can you explain the difference between the relationship with future work slide and the transition plan slide?
Sure. So, there's a lot that kind of goes into the future, right? And it's kind of that statement sounds maybe a little bit profound, but the point being here is that transition can look a lot of different ways, right? And the relationship with future work, right? How do you want to follow this on, right? What further development the further development needs to happen, right, to develop your specific product or your specific solution is going to be a bit different in scope, and it's going to be a bit different in kind of granularity than the larger long-term transition plan, right? So when you look at a product development plan, if you will, right, and you start talking about the customers that you want to acquire and the ARR you want to achieve, right, and at the very end, you have to kind of work through things at a bit different level than just kind of the minute steps for a particular technology at hand, right? So I think there's going to be a little difference in scale between the relationship with future work, right? The follow-on opportunities that you may have with certain customers, the external or the extra development that you want to accomplish for your specific solution for a specific customer, vice the long-term transition plan to get this to a sustainable business and sustainable sales or sustainable integration with the DoD space, right? So your transition plan is going to be a bit longer in scope than just the relationship to future work. Those are some of the high points, but we can talk more about that if we like.
Thanks, Jared. Appreciate that insight. So we've had a question again. The best place to see, all this information that we're giving you is directly in the proposal instructions. So in those solicitation instructions, and so we recommend reading through there. And so this question, does the size of the team have any effect on winning a SBIR phase 1? Is it a part of the evaluation criteria? If we go back to our evaluation criteria, you'll see that that's nowhere in there. So we will not be, evaluating your proposal, directly based on the number of folks that you have. One part of that could be, do you have the right folks? Are you biting off more than you can chew? We might take that into consideration. But typically with the phase 1, this is not an issue since it's a pretty small effort over a short period of time. So just to be clear, that's not part of the evaluation criteria. And then another question, we probably should clear this up as well, is there's no requirement for an MOU in phase 1. So we put that out there. We let you know just because, it is a requirement for that follow-on phase 2 contract if you'd like to submit a proposal for that phase 2. But for the phase 1, we will accept letters of support if you want to submit those. But there's no requirement for an MOU, and we also don't really accept MOUs for phase 1. So that's strictly a phase 2 thing, and we're just trying to make you aware of that. Let's see. So here's a question, Jared, maybe you can answer this one. If applied during Agility Prime STTR and it didn't get funded, is that concept something that might be considered again in the open topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we do these cycles 3 times a year, right? This is the second cycle of this year. And one of the reasons and one of the opportunities presented by that model is that if you go through the process, you don't receive a phase 1 opportunity, your first go round, right? You should receive feedback. You should receive some information that speaks to, how you can make it better. And ultimately, we want you to come back to the table. We want to see the update and to kind of get another opportunity to jump into the phase 1 program. And so certainly, if you have gone through this process and weren't successful previously, you can certainly kind of go back through and we'd love to see your proposal here for this .2 cycle.
Thanks, Jared. And one more question. So for STTRs, do the research institutions need to have established relationships or domain knowledge with DoD or the IC DAF communities, or can they come in cold as well?
Yeah, so the short answer is they can come in cold, right? Well, these are your business partners, right? From our perspective, right? They are your subcontractors. So you get to choose who you work with, right? You can find any eligible research institution to come and partner with. We don't we don't have any bias towards one research institution versus the other, right? It all comes down to your approach and the evaluation criteria specifically that we talked about a little bit before. So any qualifying research institution counts. right, is eligible as part of the program. As long as you meet those thresholds that we talked about, that's the really important part that'll keep you. If it's not satisfied, will keep you from really getting through the first phase here.
Thanks, Jared. So I see the chat winding down. So although this is an open topic, are there specific areas we have particular interest in? Specific projects, products? The answer is no, not really. We do keep this open for a reason. We're looking to see where you all are innovating, and then take that into consideration. As we try to push our Air Force forward and our Space Force forward. So. I've also received a lot of questions like this just via email. And so the answer, if you're asking, is if I submit this proposal for a specific technology, would it be compliant with the topic? The answer is always going to be yes. And we really try to make that the case. And so really any technology you can think of, there's probably some sort of DoD use for it, or at least some DoD kind of imaginative future use. And so the answer 99.999 times will be that yes, your technology is compliant, and please apply. We would love to read about it.
Yeah, the challenge here is finding things that don't matter to the Air Force, right? The Air Force is a huge place. I think the total force Air Force is on the order of 700,000 people worldwide, literally. Folks always think of the military specific equipment that the Air Force operates, right? Fighter jets or that kind of thing. But they forget about the immense amount of office space and this international system of cities and towns that we maintain through bases all over the world, right? With all the normal things we have, there's stores that are kind of like Walmart's, right? With grocery stores, churches, schools, gas stations. We have an immense amount of office space. I mean, we have a lot of kind of normal applications, right? And this open topic is eligible for any Air Force folks to use, right? So it could be something innovative and new on the quantum mechanics and bleeding edge worth of science, right, that we're trying to apply to an actual problem set. But it can also be for a lot of normal things as well, right? That there's a benefit or there's a potential market for a defense variant of something that's been commercially really successful. So there's a lot of opportunity here. There's no bias in terms of technology, right? We don't score things that are relevant to a focus area necessarily inherently higher than something else, right? Again, those evaluation criteria really break down how we look at things. And so if you can speak to those directly, right, you're going to be in a good position to be competitive, which is really important. So the best thing that we can tell folks is to, one, read the solicitation. I know solicitation reading isn't typically on the folks' list of favorite hobbies, and that's okay, right? I think that's completely normal. But when you're getting ready to submit your proposal, do make sure that you're going through and reading the solicitation, reading what has been supplied in terms of guidance, and make sure that all those boxes are checked prior to pushing the button there before, obviously, noon on the 17th. We always advocate that folks don't wait to the last minute, right? Murphy's Law applies here just the same as it does everywhere else, in the fact that everybody wants to wait to the last minute, and while it may only take a minute if you wait to the very last one, there's no necessary there's if the system goes down or things kind of get weird at the very last second, there's not a whole lot we can do, right? So please don't wait to the very end. And like I said, we really look forward to seeing your proposals and to kind of getting you started down the path of integration into the Department of Defense, integration into the federal space, and just really excited to work with everyone.
Jared, can you also, again, just touch on, what we're really asking folks to do during this phase one period of performance?
Sure. So one of the things that Zoe mentioned earlier was the idea of this feasibility study. And this feasibility study is really the core of what we're doing here in phase one. Long story short is when we talk about what a feasibility study is, right? You think of study and you think of like a book report or something. Um, we're trying to find product market fit between what you said that you can provide in terms of impact, in terms of technology, and so on. We want to illuminate the defense space for you, right? We want to illuminate the DoD. We talk about the Air Force, as part of our curriculum. We talk about the Air Force structure, the Space Force structure, right? Who you might find as being useful customers. We talk about a lot of the DoD certification and regulation processes that are kind of a black box to a lot of folks if you're not kind of already in the system a little bit, right? So we talk about a lot of these things that will help enable you to be successful in the space, right? Now, it's important to note that we don't do it for you, right? We have set up a variety of systems to kind of help facilitate engagement, and certainly on a personal level, if we know someone who is really psyched about what you're providing, then we will pass that along. But generally speaking, what we've set up, right, is the empowerment, not only for the industry side, right, through this program and the funding that we provide, but also on the government side, right? And so that is something that a lot of folks don't necessarily realize is available. So one of the things that we do is there are webinars and there's a lot of education on the DoD side with our government customers to empower them to work with you as industry as well, right? And ultimately, what we want to do is provide an environment that's conducive for folks to find, again, product market fit in technical terms, right, or in commercial terms. But we want to find match you and the community of stakeholders that you have, right, and build the community around you and your product and the impact that product brings, which is really important, right? And so we have to find some early adopters in phase one in order to be able to move to phase two, but that's not the end goal here, right? That's just the next step after receiving a phase one contract. So the feasibility study is the big piece of what we're doing in phase one, and how we do that is kind of multi-pronged in finding that product market fit, really facilitate engagement with Air Force and defense stakeholders, right? And allow you to have those substantive conversations, to have those build those partnerships with folks in the DoD, stakeholders in all different parts of the DoD, and move forward with one consolidated effort, one consolidated set of resources that can get you as far along in your development trajectory as possible. So, let's see what other questions we have here. Zoe, did you have any more that you'd like to touch on?
Not that I have seen. Chris, before we finish up, do you have anything you want to say? Anything you want to touch on?
Sorry, I was on mute there. And I apologize if Jared or Zoe already said this. Just make sure that if you ever come across conflicting information between the solicitation and other resources, whether it be something said on an AMA, something you read on a government website, always follow the instructions in the solicitation, because that is the document by which we will the evaluation criteria by which your proposal will be assessed is in there, and we'll be using that as sort of a checklist to make sure that you've met all the requirements for submitting a proposal under these programs. If you ever have a question about a disconnect between the two, you can email me and I will answer you as soon as I can. You can also contact the USAF Help Desk, which the email address for that and phone number is in the solicitation. I don't think I have any other pearls of wisdom today.
Great, thanks. That's perfect. No, I'm actually not seeing any other questions roll in. Folks in the chat, we've seen a few questions, actually quite a few, about other topics. So, like we said from the beginning, we only represent the open topic, and that's that X2021.2 and X21.B. And so if you have questions about other topics, you'll have to reach out to those topic owners or through DSIP to get questions. We can't speak on behalf of those POCs, and we don't know, what's required for those. And so that's the sole reason that we're not responding to those questions.
Yeah, as we get into the window of being able to submit proposals, right? The CITUS system there in DSIP is going to be the formal kind of Q&A resource for you, right? So as we move into the window where we can actually submit proposals, we are essentially we kind of go off comms, right? Because we cannot give individual guidance to companies or to efforts who are looking to submit a proposal as part of this cycle, right? So if you have questions, do put it into the official system there on DSIP, and that will be routed to us, right? And then the answers will be posted publicly to make sure that everybody has the same information as they submit proposals, whether they submit them on the first day or the last day of eligibility here. So we look forward to seeing your proposals. Again, this is a phenomenal opportunity for you to kind of walk in off the street, as it were, right? Come in cold, work with the Air Force, and find your product market fit with the federal government, right? And you will not find a team who cares as much about you and your experience through this program, right? And the transition of technology into our operational areas anywhere in the government space, right? So this is really important for us, right? And we want to make sure that we're providing both our industry customers, that's you guys, a fantastic experience, and we're also providing value to our government customer base as well. So we are here to make sure that this everything is run smoothly, and we're excited to work with you here as we get started.
Thanks, everybody.